It's the late 1940s. A cold silence lingers inside a Soviet military research facility. Somewhere deep underground, 5 men are locked inside a sealed chamber, unaware that they're about to become part of one of the darkest experiments in history. Or at least, that's how the story goes. The researchers call it the sleep deprivation test. The goal? To create a stimulant gas that could keep a soldier awake for 30 days straight. A perfect weapon for war. A soldier who never tires, never sleeps, never stops. At first, everything seemed fine. The subjects, 5 political prisoners promised freedom if they stayed awake for 30 days, laughed, talked, and cooperated. They had enough food, water, and a toilet. The chamber was monitored by microphones and small glass windows, the only connection to the outside world. For the first 3 days, the gas worked like magic. They stayed awake. Alert, even cheerful, the scientists joked, saying, "Comrade Stalin will be pleased." But after the 4th day, something changed. The laughter faded. The men began whispering to themselves, murmuring about nightmares they'd had, except they hadn't slept. By day 5, they started talking to people who weren't there. By day 6, they stopped talking to each other entirely. Then the screaming began. One subject ran in circles, shrieking for hours, until his vocal cords tore. Another began clawing at the steel walls. The others just sat in silence, whispering into the microphones as if confessing their sins to unseen voices. And then, on day 10, silence. No movement. No speech, nothing. The oxygen sensors still showed 5 living bodies, but the cameras couldn't see them. When the researchers finally spoke through the intercom, ordering them to lie on the floor for safety checks, a single voice replied, "We no longer wish to be freed." The scientists hesitated. When they vented the gas and prepared to open the chamber, the men screamed, begging for the gas to be turned back on. They wanted it, needed it. They were addicted to it. When the steel doors finally opened on day 15, the researchers froze. Inside was a scene straight out of hell. One man lay dead, his body torn apart, organs scattered across the floor, as if displayed intentionally. The others were covered in deep wounds, chunks of flesh missing from their arms and thighs. And yet, they were alive and eating, not the food, but themselves. Their chests were open, ribs cracked wide, lungs still moving as they stared blankly at the horrified soldiers. One of them smiled, his teeth red, and whispered, "More gas." "We need more gas." What followed was chaos. When soldiers tried to remove them, one subject ripped a man's throat out with his bare hands. Another was shot several times before going down. But even as he bled out, he kept laughing. 5 soldiers died that day. The surviving subjects were sedated, restrained, and taken to a medical facility for surgery. Doctors tried to put their organs back inside their bodies. But the men fought like animals, even under heavy morphine. One subject, during surgery, smiled at a nurse and scribbled 2 chilling words on a notepad: "Keep cutting." When asked why they wanted the gas so desperately, one of them simply said, "We needed to stay awake, because sleep, it seemed, was the one thing they truly feared." The Soviet officers decided to continue the test. They put the surviving subjects back on the stimulant gas. Immediately, the men calmed down, alert, focused, alive again. But soon, their brainwave monitors showed something strange. Massive spikes of activity, and then flatline. One subject dropped dead instantly. The final survivor was locked in the chamber with a researcher and a commander. Moments later, gunfire echoed through the facility. The researcher had shot the commander, then turned his gun on the last subject, bleeding out. The man smiled and whispered, "Have you forgotten so easily? We are you. We are the madness that hides in your mind. We are what you silence every night when you sleep." The researcher, terrified beyond reason, emptied his gun into the man's chest. And with that, the Russian sleep experiment was over. Or was it ever real? Let's break this down. The so-called Russian sleep experiment first appeared online in the early 2000s, on a website famous for horror fiction. That's right, it's a creepypasta, not a historical document. No record exists in any Soviet archive. No scientist, no facility, no evidence. The entire story is a work of fiction, but a disturbingly good one. And scientifically, impossible. No known chemical or gas can keep humans awake for 15 straight days without death or psychosis. After 4 to 5 days of no sleep, the human brain begins to hallucinate, lose memory, and even shut down essential functions. At 10 days, you'd be in a coma or dead. Sure, during World War II, both the Germans and Allies used amphetamines like Pervitin and Benzodrineto, keep soldiers awake for short periods, but never more than a day or two. Even then, soldiers often crashed into severe exhaustion, psychosis, or heart failure. So no, the Russian sleep experiment never happened. It's a horror story born from the internet age, a cautionary tale about obsession, control, and what happens when science forgets its humanity. And maybe that's what makes it so terrifying, because deep down, we all know the truth. The real monsters there are not the ones behind glass, but the ones in white coats, who dare to play God. So next time you can't sleep, just remember, somewhere out there, someone might still be trying to find that gas. Sweet dreams.